Hello and welcome to Hollywood at Home from Arizona Public Media. I'm Victoria Lucas. If you're in the mood for a subtle, thought-provoking film, boy, are you in the wrong place, because tonight's movie is A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, the ridiculously funny musical set in ancient Rome. Zero Mostel stars as Pseudolus, the lazy, conniving slave to a wealthy family who spends every waking moment dreaming up wild schemes to win his freedom. When, as luck would have it, his young master falls in love with the slave girl next door, Pseudolus sees his path to success. He agrees to help the boy win her affections in exchange for his release from bondage. Unfortunately, the two discover that she has already been sold to a barbaric Roman army captain who's on his way to claim her. And what follows is a bawdy adventure filled with slapstick gags, disguises, mistaken identity, a wild chariot race, crazy plot twists, and 7 great songs by none other than Stephen Sondheim, who starts the film off with the classic Comedy Tonight, and later memorably rhymes tunics with eunuchs. The supporting cast includes comedy legends Phil Silvers as the courtesan merchant who lives next door, Jack Gilford as the aptly named Hysterium, you'll see why, young Michael Crawford as the clueless young lover, also aptly named Hero, and in his final film, the great Buster Keaton as Erroneous, the movie's literal running gag. You probably know that the movie is adapted from the smash hit musical that ran for more than 2 years on Broadway. But did you know that the stage show itself was an adaptation 2,200 years in the making? That's right. A 3rd century BC Roman playwright named Plautus wrote very popular farces. Apparently, even the ancient Romans needed an occasional laugh. But it took modern-day television writers Larry Gelbart and Bert Shevlov to realize the potential of these plays for an update. Both men loved classical comedy, and they had the brilliant idea to combine the old stories with the distinctly American tradition of vaudeville. For 5 years, they worked at adapting material from Plautus's plays into a script filled with puns, malapropisms, and double entendres, then teamed up with composer Stephen Sondheim to create a Broadway musical that quickly won multiple Tony Awards, including Best Musical. Incidentally, the title comes from a line often used, perhaps overused, by vaudeville comics to start a joke. A funny thing happened on the way to the theater. Well, as you might expect, Hollywood wasted little time before making plans to adapt the Broadway musical into a film. After all, Hollywood does have a reputation for doing remakes and sequels, though they don't usually wait 22 centuries to do it. Zero Mostel had starred in the Broadway production, and the film's producers wanted him for the movie as well. But Mostel insisted on having a say in choosing the director, so he submitted a list of 5 names with whom he'd be willing to work. From that list, the studio chose Richard Lester, an American then based in London. Lester's approach to comedy had been showcased in the 2 Beatles movies he directed, 1964's A Hard Day's Night, and the following year's Help, followed by the swinging 60s comedy The Knack and How to Get It. His style featured frenetic pacing, lots of visual jokes, and sophisticated silliness. But adapting a stage musical into a feature film can be tricky. What works on a stage in front of a live audience doesn't always translate to the camera. Director Lester decided to expand the action to make the movie feel as if it had been really filmed in ancient Rome, but deliberately including lots of fun inaccuracies and inconsistencies, because after all, this is a farce. Lester asked Tony Walton, who had designed the set for the Broadway play, to do the production and costume designs for the film. Walton created a somewhat grimy and chaotic look for the sets, suitable for action in what pseudolists would refer to as a less fashionable suburb of Rome. Lester then filled the frames with crowds of slaves, eunuchs, soldiers, ladies of the night, and haughty patricians, all of them tending to burst into song at the slightest provocation. Filming in Italy would have been prohibitively expensive, so the decision was made to film in Spain. Production began in September 1965 at studios in Madrid and on locations throughout the country with a budget of just over $2 million. The shoot was not easy. The weather went from gloomy and rainy to suffocatingly hot, often in the same day. Also, an unexpected and unwelcome issue for cast and crew was the swarms of flies attracted to outdoor sets filled with fruits and vegetables that were deliberately past their prime, and animals that were often, let's say, ripe. The crew were able to laugh and refer to the flies as uncredited extras, but it wasn't that easy for the cast. After many futile attempts to get rid of the pests, Director Lester told his actors that they could wave off the flies as long as it appeared they were doing shtick. And in the end, it turned out that the crew joke about uncredited extras was premature. The flies did get a clever in-joke tribute in the movie's animated closing credits, so be sure to stay and watch for that. Flies aside, some of the younger actors were apprehensive at first about working opposite lead actors who were larger-than-life stars, though the veterans quickly put them at ease. 24-year-old Annette Andre, who played the young woman Philia, loved every minute of the shoot, saying, "Buster Keaton played my father. You can't do much better than that." Apparently, she even loved doing her own stunts. Later laughing, "Richard was rather cavalier about the stunts. Michael and I did a lot of our own, climbing around on roofs and such. At one point, I was actually driving one of the chariots in the big chase scene. Today, you would never be allowed to do those dangerous things, but we were young and tended to laugh and jump right in. I figured if Michael could do it, so could I." And the entire cast was in awe of Buster Keaton, playing the myopic old man who keeps running through the film at the oddest moments. Keaton was suffering from cancer, but he insisted on doing many of his own stunts, saying that nobody could properly imitate his pratfalls. Director Lester convinced him to use a double for some of the wide-shot running sequences, but in the chase scene at the end, without warning the director, Keaton himself did the stunt of barreling headlong into a tree and tumbling backwards. Once Lester finally caught his breath enough to call cut, Keaton scrambled to his feet, whereupon the cast and crew burst into an ovation. Finally, many of the people, both in front of and behind the camera, went on to major success. Richard Lester directed the hugely popular Three Musketeers and the two Superman sequels. Actor Michael Crawford became a phenomenon, starring in Andrew Lloyd Webber's Phantom of the Opera. Writer Larry Gelbart created the television series MASH and wrote the features Oh God and Tootsie. And of course, Stephen Sondheim became one of the most important figures in musical theater, credited with reinventing the American musical. So now please sit back and get ready to laugh, and maybe cringe a bit at some of decidedly non-politically correct 60s humor. As one critic wrote, "Subtle, this movie is not, but funny, it most certainly is." From 1966, it's A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum.